When it comes to horror, especially slashers, the whodunit approach is often used to keep the audience guessing at who the killer may be. Even amongst other horror subgenres such as paranormal or creature feature, we try and hide whatever entity or monster is behind it until the final big reveal. However, in some cases, the spotlight is directed at someone who we are made to believe is the villain behind it all, when it turns out they are actually not the bad guy, and the main character or otherwise are the real villains all along. Before we begin though, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel and hit that hype button if you're on mobile. Every new sub helps us achieve our goal and keeps us motivated to create new content with you in mind. With that being said, I am your host Sarah, and here are 10 horror films where the villain isn't who you think it is. Number 1. 13 Ghosts. Everyone remembers a ghost from this film, as they were fantastically brought to life on screen through impressive makeup effects and cinematography. But what many people forget is they aren't actually the villains of this film. Sure, they are spooky and even in some cases dangerous, but in reality they are just defending themselves against a true bad guy, Cyrus Criticus. In the opening moments of the film, we see Cyrus and a team of spectral snatchers try to lure and trap a ghost, without the whimsy of what we've seen in Ghostbusters. However, things go wrong, and Cyrus is seemingly killed during this event, which kicks off the rest of the movie as his house and belongings are then inherited by his nephew Arthur. As Arthur and his family move into Cyrus's mansion, they soon discover it's a giant ghost trap, housing some of the most sinister looking spirits, who pretty much just want to leave and will go through anyone they have to gain their freedom. Then we see Cyrus, and at first we think he too is one of the ghosts trapped in this puzzle box, but turns out he faked his death because he needed to lure Arthur in, as his sacrifice would become the 13th ghost, which would allow him to unlock some kind of hell eye and gain all the knowledge of the gods, something like that anyway. Greed is a powerful motivator, as well as the lust for ultimate power, a tale as old as time when it comes to villains, especially if you're familiar with the superhero stories. But the original and the remake are fantastic watches, and apparently there will be a limited series coming out soon, but before that happens, head over to Prime, Apple TV or Fandango to check it out. Number 2. The Others. Most audiences who caught the trailer for this film were under the impression that this was yet again another haunted house style horror film, with a World War era twist to it. But as the title of this list suggests, they were mistaken about who the villains are in this film. See, the twist is the family we watch throughout the film were actually the ones who died and are haunting the manor, whereas the ghosts they keep encountering are present day people attempting to buy and renovate this place. So who are the real villains then? Well, neither, I suppose. It all depends on who you side with, because the family just wants to keep living in their little bubble of not accepting that they are dead, while the new family are just trying to, well, live their lives. I guess you could say the villains could be the caretakers, who are basically Death and the Ferryman, who are trying to convince the dead family to accept their circumstances so that they can move on. Either way, the film is excellent, has a great atmosphere and well acted, so head over to AMC Plus, Sling, Roku, Prime, Apple TV or Fandango to check it out. Number 3. Hellraiser. When people hear the title of Hellraiser, they usually picture Pinhead along with his various Cenobites, but often forget the true villains in each film. When it comes to the first installment, the actual baddies are Frank and Julia, the sex-obsessed uncle of Kirsty and his lover/Kirsty's stepmother. Along his worldly travels, Frank comes across the Lament Cube, which is a puzzle box that when solved can transport you to a plane of existence where pleasures beyond the human mind can be attained. Of course, this is just another way of saying it takes your ass to hell. So when Frank tries to escape, he needs to reassemble himself, and the only way to do it is with fresh flesh and blood, of course. So this is where Julia comes in, who lures strange men to her home with promises of sweaty, sexy good time and brings them up to the attic where they get the last surprise they will ever get. However, one day Kirsty becomes a bit suspicious of her stepmother, suspecting her of cheating on her father, and follows her, only to discover the truth. The film is possibly one of the best gothic Lovecraftian-inspired horror films of the late 80s, and while the rest of these series has its highs and extreme lows, I still recommend checking them out, as well as the books and comic spin-offs. Head over to Tubi, Sling Prime, Apple TV or Fandango to watch. Number 4, Nightbreed. Speaking of Clive Barker, Nightbreed is another excellent offering in his catalogue, and probably fits the theme of this list even more, as pretty much every grotesque monstrosity character in this film is not a villain, and rather just a tragic figure trying to live their life while normies in the world want to exterminate them. After all, people have a tendency to kill whatever they don't understand, and many don't even try to understand anyone, which is proven time and time again every time I turn on the news lately. And it's not just racism or so, as people born with disabilities or deformities are often treated as subhuman, which is downright disgusting and unbelievable. In the 80s and early 90s, many films depicted villains as misshapen or grotesque, so it was refreshing for a film like this to come along and show that just because someone looks different doesn't mean that they are a monster. Definitely give this a watch over on Tubi, Pluto, Plex, Prime, Apple TV or Fandango. Number 5, King Kong. This is probably more obvious than the other entries, as just like the next entry on our list, it's been explored and talked about by various film buffs and fans over the decades since it first released. But just in case you didn't know, the great gorilla King Kong is not the villain of this movie. Instead, it's us. Yep, humankind. And how are we the villains? Well, because humanity has a tendency to traverse into the unknown, into other people's lands, destroy their way of life, and take what isn't theirs. And in the case of the film King Kong, we went to Skull Island and kidnapped Kong, so we could turn him into some spectacle for profit. King Kong was just trying to do his thing, protecting the inhabitants of the island, eating his big bananas and sleeping away in the jungle when humans came along and disrupted all of that. Essentially, he was just defending himself, which led to more violence and to Kong's demise as he climbed to the top of the Empire State Building. It's a harrowing tale of man versus nature, one which sadly to this day hasn't really been learned. But you can watch this epic film and its many sequels over on Prime, Apple TV or Fandango. And if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's get back to it. Number 6, Frankenstein. Every horror fan knows Frankenstein is the name of the scientist, not the resurrected corpse. But pop culture will have you believe otherwise, and so often people think he's the villain of this film, when in fact, the scientist is the true evil. While there have been numerous films adapted from the book, including 2 new films coming this year, the classic film from 1931 is the one most people are familiar with. Now, this isn't the first film, as a short silent one was made in 1910. But in the Universal production, we got the tall, blocky look with the neck bolts and all the stitches. And later on, when the film was re-released with Technicolor, we also got the green skin. Anyhow, based on the book by author Mary Shelley, the story revolves around a scientist named Victor Frankenstein, which was changed to Henry Frankenstein for the film, and his obsession with immortality and life after death. Stealing body parts from graveyards and morgues, they stitch a man together and give him life through a series of electrical devices to stimulate brain function. However, his assistant Fritz accidentally damages the brain before the procedure, lessening the creature's intelligence and turning him into a more giant primal child. As the monster learns about life and explores a nearby village, the people are frightened by him, and they turn on him, which of course he tries to protect himself, and having the mind of a child, he reacts often on instinct, which only makes things worse. There is relatively two types of fears: agonophobia, which is the fear of the unknown, and xenophobia, the fear of unfamiliar people, places, or things, as people generally still have an us versus them attitude in life, and this theme can also be a metaphor for things like racism, which often breeds violence out of the same fears. Catch the classic film over on Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango. Number 7, Housebound. A clever film, it blends horror, drama, and comedy together to tell the tale of a young woman placed under house arrest, when she starts to suspect that there's some ghosties haunting her. However, it turns out all the paranormal happenings are just a series of elaborate, constructed secret hallways by a young, wise person named Eugene. The real villain of this film is actually her psychologist, Dennis, who develops a kind of sick obsession with caring for his patients, especially young Kylie Buckner. Turns out though, through another reveal, he's not even a real psychologist, just an intern. In the end, Kylie realises this, and Eugene even comes to her rescue, subjecting Dennis to a few thousand volts of shock therapy before his head explodes. This is a classic case of don't judge a book by its cover. Even though I'll admit, if someone was living in my walls, I'd be freaked out too. You can watch this over on Pluto, Plex, Philo, Prime, Apple TV, and of course Fandango. Mad that you can live in the walls in America. Can't do that in the UK. They're all filled. Number 8, Crimson Peak. Much like the previous entry, the ghosts in this film are not the villains, and instead it's once again an obsessed lover type of situation. Now, originally when I first saw the film, I was a bit disappointed because I was expecting a haunted house type of film based on the trailers they had shown, and not some gothic romance. But once you are aware of what kind of story it is, the film is actually pretty well constructed, and there are a lot of clues sprinkled throughout about character motives and such. That being said, there are actual ghosts in this film. But as you may have guessed, it's from the theme of this list. They aren't bad ghosties at all. Just like the film Sixth Sense, they are trying to warn the good characters. Just maybe they shouldn't pop out at them like a jump scare. Why can't ghosts use their abilities just write a simple note? Why do they always have to leave a cryptic message scrawled on blood on the bathroom walls? Eventually though, the real villains wind up dead and become a part of the collection of spirits trapped on the property. Head over to Prime, Apple TV, or Fandango to check it out. Number 9, I Am Legend. With a possible sequel on the way, it seems they will be going with the original ending of the film, which more clearly defines that Robert is the villain of the film, not the vampire zombies. Now granted, a disease spread, infected millions of people, and they become the nocturnal monsters. But as the years have passed, they've kind of formed their own groups, their own society, like cavemen or other tribal people that still exist in some corners of the world today. They are nomadic and protect themselves against threats. The main vampire guy who hunts after Robert only does so because he kidnapped his wife, and in the original ending of the film we see that once he returns her to him, a kind of truce is made. Test audiences either didn't get it or maybe they just didn't like it. So of course in a theatre release we get Robert blowing them and himself up with a grenade while the younger mother and her child make an escape, ultimately defeating the entire point of the story, that nothing is black and white. Everything is a bit more grey. Can't speak on the sequel yet as it hasn't materialised and no trailer is out, but I am curious where they will take the story. That being said, you can stream the original over on Prime, Apple TV or Fandango. I did like the original. Number 10, The Village. Alright, so after Sixth Sense, Shyamalan was hailed to be the next Hitchcock. And while he did have potential, I think they jumped the gun on that praise a bit. And it just went to his ego, which caused him to focus so much on the twists in his narratives that they became more and more easily spotted and nonsensical in many cases. By the time this film rolled out, people were already making jokes that the twist would probably be something akin to "It's all in their head." Well, it kind of is. For those of you who haven't seen it, a group of people living in a woodland area are being terrorised by some big antlered creatures. They have no technology, living like settlers from the 1800s, and one day the leader of the village has to send his blind daughter out to seek another village to retrieve some medicine. all while being stalked by some guy who is once again obsessed with her. As she reaches the outskirts of the forest, this is where the twist reveals itself. They have been living in a giant national park. It's actually modern day, and the monsters are just people from the community dressing up to keep anyone from leaving. So who are the real villains? I would say it's the village elders, the group of rich people who decided to leave modern life and establish this community. And instead of telling the truth to their people, they just lied and kind of forced them all to stay. This ending went down about as well as cod liver oil. People absolutely thrashed this movie in reviews. And while I agree it's not all that great, it does get points for at least being original. It just starts to fall apart if you start pulling at any threads of the logic. If you absolutely need to see it though, you can catch it over on Hulu, Disney+, Sling, Prime, Apple TV, and always Fandango. Thank you for checking out the video. Did we leave anything off the list? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to tap that bell icon to stay up to date with our latest releases. And you can also hit that hype button for us. We greatly appreciate it. You can reach out to us on Twitter and X at Studio Fat, or chat with us on Discord, and any other socials will all be linked below. If you're really enjoying our content and want to help support us, click that join button for exclusive content rewards and perks. Make sure to check out our very own merch store located at fatninja.shop. All proceeds go towards our next film project, so we'd greatly appreciate it. I have been your host, Sarah, and thank you for being here with me today. Have the most beautiful day, and take care. Very fitting wearing the devil, talking about horrors.